Okay, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. Tomorrow's a big day. It's the second Saturday Cars and Coffee, exclusively at Gateway Ford and Gateway Nissan, my dealerships in Greenville, Tennessee. And based on the Facebook response that we're getting, it could be big. It could be the biggest thing east of Knoxville. The biggest Cars and Coffee event that I know of, that I've ever seen or heard of, is the Harper's Cars and Coffee. You know, sometimes they just get too big. It becomes a huge traffic jam, and people bring things that are questionable. But, you know, it really doesn't matter what you bring to a Cars and Coffee event, because if you love it, if it's special to you, it doesn't matter how many doors it has. You know, a lot of people think the only collectible cars are two-door sports cars or lifted trucks or Model A Fords or, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, who's to say a Pinto station wagon couldn't be special to you? The reason I bring up Pinto station wagon is because I saw one on Facebook Marketplace, and I was actually tempted until I saw how far away it is. But this is a baby blue Pinto Estate station wagon that has wood grain vinyl slabbed on the side of it. It has a luggage rack, and it has a V6 engine. I didn't even know they put V6 engines in Pintos. And I'd say there are many of you are out there saying, "What's a Pinto?" You know, it's a small car. It was Ford's first attempt at a really small car that was not imported. You know, Ford has been a part of a lot of different companies, especially in England. Ford of Great Britain built a very popular brand, or a very popular car called the Cortina. And, you know, a lot of those little small British cars that are just iconic in that country are really quite plain looking to the American eye. But to the Brits, they love those things. And if somebody has one in or around Upper East Tennessee, I hope they bring it. Bring it! But if you are in the Tri-Cities region, you can just drive down. We're going to be kicking things off. I'm going to be here at 7 a.m. on tomorrow morning. And I'm going to start moving cars out and getting the Creamy Cup is providing coffee and other coffee-related drinks. And then I've got a Blue Million Donuts going to be here. I'm going to have a fire pit. I'm going to have a bunch of nice, comfortable Adirondack chairs around it for us old folk where we can sit. And then the rest of the people are going to be, you know, meandering around looking at everybody's cars. I'm giving away $500. 5 $100 bills for different categories. And so I think that'll be fun. And really, I think the response is going to be good. We could have 100 to 200 cars here. It wouldn't surprise me. And at the same time, we're having a big car wash here. It's not for the public. What I do is I offer civic groups or church groups, schools, the opportunity to come make money washing cars in our inventory. And, you know, some of the cars I really don't need washing, but it's just a great way to give to the community. So we've got a group of young people coming early on Saturday to wash inventory. I pay them $5 a car, and as many cars as they can get done. You know, if they wash 100 cars, they make $500, and they're really excited about it. So with the Cars and Coffee going on in the front of the building and the car wash going on in the back, there's going to be a lot of activity at Gateway, and I'm really excited. I know you're not going to believe this if you've listened to this show for any period of time, but my gigantic car hauler, the 1949 F4 that I built a custom flatbed for, it's a 1949 body. It has a 1968 460 V8 engine. It has a C6 transmission from, what was the transmission from? Oh, yeah, that was from a Ford Thunderbird. The seats are from a 2015 Mustang. What else is weird about that thing? Well, it's just gorgeous. and it's being revealed to the public. It's making its grand entry. I'm going to put a 66 Mustang on the back of it. It'll be quite the display. And I've got all my other cars are going to be out there. So I'm really excited about this. And if you need an excuse to get out of the house and bring your old car, give it some exercise. You know, the worst thing for an old car is to let it sit. You know, be honest. You've been thinking about getting it out. You just keep putting it off. Just make sure that it has oil in it and antifreeze and that the brakes work. And if you can't get it to start, you can always jump it off. But get it down here. Let's see it. You know, I might even buy some old cars. Who knows? But yeah, we're going to be open at Gateway. We're going to be selling cars too. So, you know, if you just happen to want a new Ford or a Nissan, we've got them. We got employee pricing on Fords, so that's a really big deal. Well, I'm going to take my first break, and I'll be back here in just 1 minute. I've had a couple interesting inquiries lately from listeners, and some of them are local because they hear it on this local radio station. Others are national because they hear the podcast. I did not recognize the area code on this questioner, but they were asking about a Jeep Gladiator, and they wanted me to check it out, and if they thought that buying a Jeep Gladiator was something good to do. Well, they said it was from New York. That's strike 3 for me. There's no reason to even talk about strike 1 or strike 2. Strike 3 is the fact that it's in New York. Now, this vehicle only had 7,000 miles on it. But you know, when you drive a vehicle just in one winter in the Great White North, and it is exposed to salt, and it's a Stellantis product, it's going to rust. It's going to make its way into every little nook and cranny, and it's going to eat away. If it finds one just small spot of bare metal, it's off to the races as far as rust is concerned. So if you're looking at, you know, I don't care if it's Auto Trader or Car Gurus or Carvana, get the VIN number and find out where that thing lived. And if it lived north of the Mason-Dixon line, that would be the upper border of Maryland. If it lived north of that, then you really need to think about it, unless it was a garage-kept car and never driven in winter weather. This also applies to Wisconsin, Michigan, definitely Minnesota. Had a truck, it was a Ram truck, just blew by me yesterday. And it was driving through Greenville. You know, why can't the police be available when you see something like that? I mean, this guy was probably doing 80 in a 40. But he was also from Minnesota. So if you're listening to this, Mr. Ram truck driver, shame on you. You deserve all the rust that your vehicle has because it was rusted everywhere. The bumpers were completely rusted through. The chrome bumpers. And that's what happens. But the rocker panels, the doors, the bedside, the wheel wells, everything. There's rust everywhere. And it probably lived up there, and he probably never really took any care to rinse the bottom of it. If you do have a car and you live in, you know, bad weather areas, you can fight this off as much as possible just by using a pressure washer. Do you have a pressure washer at your house? Most people don't, but if you do, you need to fire it up, and you're going to get wet. If you can put your vehicle up on a lift, that's the best thing to do. But if you can't, just get down on the driveway and lay under it. You can get a handheld little pressure washer. It's like a pistol grip. It has a very short rod. It's not like one of those really long ones. And you can get into a lot of nooks and crannies with that. But, you know, if you want to preserve your car, if you're thinking about keeping it for a long time, you need to do this. Just rinse off the underside of your car. And the best way to do it is with high pressure. And like I say, you're going to get wet. I bought a creeper. You know what a creeper is? That's one of those things you lay down on. You see mechanics using them all the time where you can slide up underneath the car. That's a good thing for a car owner to have. That and one of those little rolling stools. I have one of those that's very handy because I can't bend my knees as well as I used to be able to. When I'm cleaning the wheels on my old cars, I use it to go around and do the detailed cleaning. And I also use it when I'm checking the air pressure in my tires or have to do anything around the lower part of my car. I'm a geezer. What can I say? Now, some people have a jack even. You can buy those at Harbor Freight. They're not really expensive. Buy as good a one as you can afford. But I have one of those too, and I can jack up my car and actually put some jack stands under it. But now if you're going to do that, make sure you're on very level ground and just make sure you know what you're doing, because there's a lot of people that have gotten seriously injured or killed because they had a car up on jack stands and they were on a slight slope and somebody bumped into it and it fell on them. I had another contact from a radio show listener, so relatively local, and they are kind of interested in leasing as a defensive position against depreciation. I said, that's an interesting concept. Is leasing a defensive position? And the more I thought about it, it really is. And let me explain. When you buy a car and you finance it, you're paying interest, and not only is money going out to pay interest, but money is going out, not yet, but over time through depreciation. It's invisible until you try to trade it or sell it to someone. But it is a true cost of ownership. So how can you protect yourself from depreciation? Well, as far as I know, there's only one way, and that is to lease a vehicle. Now, there are some people out there saying, well, wait a minute. With leasing, aren't you paying for the depreciation? Yes, you are paying for the depreciation for the period of time that you will own that vehicle. But it is a forecasted depreciation by the leasing company. And the leasing company could be Ford Motor Credit, could be Honda Motor Credit, it could be a bank that offers leasing. But, they set something called the residual value. So let's say that you're leasing a vehicle for 3 years. Then there is a percentage that Ford Motor Credit will say that they estimate that vehicle will be worth in 3 years. And let's say it's 54%, and it has a $40,000 MSRP. Well, 54% of $40,000 is $21,600. And if you divide that by 36 months, that monthly payment is $600 a month. So what does that represent? That car they're estimating that car will depreciate $600 a month. Now, what if you buy that $40,000 car and you finance it for 72 months? Well, you got to pay tax on the vehicle, and you don't have to pay tax on the vehicle if you lease it. You just pay tax on the monthly payment. Each $600 monthly payment is taxed, okay? But when you buy the $40,000 vehicle, you're going to pay like $3,000 in tax. And you're also financing that if you don't pay anything down. Well, what's that monthly payment? About $700 a month, a little over. Now, some people say, well, I'd rather own the vehicle than, lease it because I like to own what I drive. Well, you don't really own it. I mean, the title's in your name, but if you miss a couple payments, they're going to come get it. You don't really own it until you've made your final payment. But if you decide to trade that vehicle in 3 years, what's it worth? Well, the lease company thinks it's going to be worth, what was that, $21,500? Well, what if it falls out of favor of the market, like a lot of vehicles do, and it's actually worth $15,500? What happens when you lease it? Well, you just turn the keys in, walk away, because your residual value is guaranteed unless you've abused the vehicle. So even if it is worth $15,000, that's the problem of the leasing company. But if you own that vehicle and you decide to trade after 3 years, and your payoff is $30,000 and its estimated value is $15,500, look what kind of hole you're in. You never get in a hole when you lease a vehicle. Now, there's a lot of people say, well, I drive a lot of miles. I'll drive 30,000 miles a year. Just calculate the lease based on 30,000 miles a year. Build it in. A lot of the ads that you see for extremely low lease payments, like there's a Toyota dealer in this market that advertises low payments. They're all leases, and they're based on a very low mileage, like 10,000 miles or 12,000 miles. Well, not many people just drive 10,000 miles a year. And it's better to build in a cushion. If you think you're going to drive 25,000 miles a year and you're fairly certain of that, then build in 25,000 miles a year into the lease. What's that going to do to the depreciation? It's going to make it greater. It's going to make your monthly payment higher. But still, at the end of the lease, you can hand them the keys and walk away. But what if the opposite is true? What if the vehicle that the residual value was $21,500, which is what you can buy it for at the end of the lease if you want it? What if that vehicle ends up being worth $25,000 and you can buy it for $21,500? You might want to buy it, and even if you don't want to keep it, buy it and then flip it. Sell it to one of your friends. My daughters typically lease they always lease their vehicles, and about 6 months before the lease expires, they start calling their network of friends. They send out a Facebook post or whatever that they're getting ready to turn in their Expedition or whatever they happen to be driving. And they're very successful at that. They end up selling them every single time before their new one comes in. Plus, they always have a lower payment than they would if they had bought it in the first place. So my main point here is to look at the lease. It's a great way to hedge your bet against depreciation. But I'm going to say that with a warning. There are unscrupulous dealers out there. Probably the dealers are scrupulous, but the people that work for them are unscrupulous. And what they'll do is they'll jack around with the selling price. If you tell them you want to lease a vehicle, they'll jack up the price versus the price that they quoted you if you buy it. That's why it's so important to hit the 4 targets. When you're trying to buy a car, know what you're paying for the car. It's the most important thing. Know what you're getting for your trade. Know what the terms are in terms of interest rate and, how long you're financing the vehicle. And then know what the aftermarkets are. Don't sign a contract that you don't know what you're buying. You hit those 4 targets, you'll usually get a pretty good deal, if you're a decent negotiator. But if you're not a good negotiator, you might want to take a quarterback with you, somebody that is. But if you convert to lease at that point, you've got a sale price. Make sure that the capitalized cost is the same as the selling price on the purchase, okay? I'll say that again, capitalized cost. Just ask the salesperson, I want a lease payment, and he gives you a lease payment. Say, well, is the capitalized cost or the cap cost the same as the price that you were selling it to me for when you did the 72-month financing? Are you using the same cap cost? He may look at you and say, what's cap cost? Or he may say, let me go get my manager. And the manager comes in and says, you know about cap cost, huh? Where'd you learn that? I listened to this podcast called My Car Guru. He told me about it. Make him show it to you. You can have them print 2 contracts, one lease contract, one purchase contract, and just put them side by side. Look at them. Speed is the enemy of a great deal. It really is. The more you rush, the more you pay. That's a rule. I don't think Socrates said it, but Lenny Lawson said it. Slow down. Think about it. The salesperson's in a hurry, the finance manager's in a hurry. Everybody's in a hurry, but you're the person driving the car, driving the train, driving whatever. You got your foot on the gas and you got your foot on the brake. Use the brake. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. I had a salesperson come to me the other day in confidence, and he's struggling a little bit. He said, Lenny, I have a problem. And I said, what is it? He said, when I get with a customer that's like a doctor or a lawyer or a professional, or if they're older, he said, I struggle, with confidence. I fumble my words and stuff. And I said, why do you think that is? He said, I don't know. I think it's just the fact that I feel that they're smarter than me. I said, well, from an educational standpoint, maybe they are, but you're the one that has studied all of this product. You know everything about everything from an F-150 to a Nissan Versa, right? Right. You've taken all the tests, and you are a very personable person. You're very likable. You've got nothing to be intimidated about. But what you have to remember is that I heard this in a Bible study a couple weeks ago, that Jimmy Carter once said, regardless of what you think of Jimmy Carter, this is a brilliant comment. The two most important people are Jesus and the person in front of you. And I told him that, and I said, listen, your job is not to sell them a car. Your job is to give them enough information and help them buy a vehicle that is best for them. And that involves a whole lot more listening than it does talking. And if they truly feel that you have their best interests at heart, then you'll make a sale, one way or the other. So sometimes we just have to get ourselves and our heads out of the way and understand what the mission is. It's not to cram somebody in a car that they don't need. It's not to force somebody to finance a car for 84 months when really all they really need to do is 60. It's not to put them in a car that has a payment that's barely affordable and they're not going to be able to live the rest of their life because of this car payment. It's to help them make a great decision, whether it's to buy a car or lease a car. Present them with options. A lot of customers push back when you make suggestions until you show them how it benefits them. And they still may not like it. I mean, sometimes you just bring up the word lease, you just start to say it, and they say, absolutely not. But in this current environment and all the crazy things that are going on in the car business, I think it's worth a look. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. If you have a question, you can text me 423-552-2020 or call, or you can send me an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.